Hi, and welcome back to Blade and Sorcery Mods. I am Illithid, and this is a series where I talk about some of the mods that I've been playing with recently. I'll go over the main details and features of each mod, and how they affected my personal playing experience. Today's date is December 3rd, 2023, and I'm playing the PC version on U12.3. The links to each mod featured in this video can be found in the description below. Without further delay, let's get started. Internals by Sectix is a mod that allows you to perform several internal injuries to your enemies that apply various effects on them. You can find a complete list on the mod page, but here's a demo of the injuries that I was able to perform. Stabbing an enemy's heart applies extreme bleeding, and stabbing their lungs applies suffocation. You'll see that the enemy's movement will slow down from this, and they'll eventually drop to an unresponsive state. The difference here is that suffocation will kill them eventually, whereas extreme bleeding leaves them with very low HP for you to deliver the final blow. Striking the Achilles tendon causes unbalance, which prevents them from walking. Two things that I didn't see mentioned on the page were arm and leg injuries, which prevents the enemies from holding items and standing up, respectively. They can be applied with enough damage to the limb or by removing the limb. I wasn't able to apply any of the head or neck injuries because piercing damage to those areas seemed to kill instantly. I tried slashing the eyes to see if I could cause blindness with that, but that didn't work out either. This mod includes a scrollable mod configuration menu, so you know that there's a lot to play around with. From damage thresholds required to inflict the injuries, to enemy recovery rates, and some miscellaneous settings like survivable dismemberment and health multipliers. You can see that internals is very customizable, so you can tune it to your exact liking. But honestly, I agree with the mod author that the default settings are already very enjoyable to use. No matter what type of weapon you're using, slashing, piercing, or bludgeoning, it all feels nicely tuned for this mod. A recommendation that I would like to make is to have separate health multipliers, one for the player and one for enemies. I found that the default settings was great for enemies, but it made me feel like a total damage sponge. To work around this, I dropped it down to 1x and used another mod to boost enemy HP. If you wanted to do the same, I would recommend Longer Standing Enemies by SNM Sectix, not to be confused with this Sectix that made internals. Although I couldn't play around with all of the injuries, I still had a lot of fun with this mod. It made combat feel so much more dynamic. Archery and blunt weapon combat become more viable and a whole lot more realistic due to the injuries. For example, if you play your cards right, you can avoid being bum rushed by 3 or 4 different enemies. But even if you do find yourself in that situation, it's so satisfying
to remind these fools of the grave mistake they've just made, reminding them of the immeasurable power difference between a mere NPC and you.
So yeah, check out internals. Do you ever find yourself wanting to bring more equipment into battle? Are those 4 default storage slots not cutting it? Then check out MoreSlots by Wooly and uploaded by user Wooly616. This mod adds 14 additional equipment slots to your body, with the option to add more. For Nomad players, this mod is available if you opt into the scripted mods beta, but I'm not sure how customizable it is compared to the PC version. The default additional slots are located on both calves, thighs, there's 3 on the lower back, 2 on the chest. Don't laugh, it's a convenient place for bomb bags, okay? The upper arms, forearms, and 1 on the mouth. This mod is awful. Let's try that again. This mod does include a few settings in the mod configuration menu, but in order to modify the slots themselves, you'll have to edit the JSON files inside the mod folder. More on that in a minute. The settings that you can adjust in-game toggle the debug mode and forcing loadout saves. The debug mode allows you to see the slots on your body along with the orientation and position of each slot, but it only works when you first start the game and load into the home level. If you move to a different map after that, the markers no longer appear even if you toggle that setting. The force save settings makes the game save your current loadout whenever you change levels, restart levels, exit to the home level, and when you exit to the main menu. This is very useful because under normal circumstances, your loadout is only saved when you travel to a stage from the home level. Imagine spending so much time experimenting and finally finding your perfect loadout while you're at the arena, only to have to re-equip everything when you exit the level. Enabling this setting will save you that headache. The only times it won't save is when you restart after dying and when you exit the game. Onto those JSON files now. If you wanted to disable a slot, adjust its position, or adjust the orientation, you'll have to navigate to the holders subfolder inside the mod folder and modify the JSON file for that specific slot. To disable it, you'll just have to change the value of the enabled key to false. And to adjust them, you can modify the values of the XYZ coordinates in the position and rotation objects to your liking. You can also add your very own custom slot by creating your own JSON file in that same exact folder. The mod page has information on how to do this, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about how to configure it. But to summarize the process, first you'll create a JSON file using the sample data provided on the mod page, or you can just duplicate and rename an existing file. Then you change the value of ID so it doesn't conflict with an existing slot, and then set the ragdoll part name value to reference the body part that you want the slot on. And finally, the last thing is to adjust the position and rotation. I know I just barraged you with a lot of information, but there's one more thing that I want to mention, and trust me, it's worth knowing. So you may have noticed a key in the JSON file called holder data ID. What this does is reference either the standard shoulder or hip slots and determines what kind of items you can have in a custom slot. All of the added slots in this mod reference the hip slot, but it can be changed to reference the back slot by changing holder hips to holder back. So why would you want to do that? Well, you know how bigger items are usually only able to be equipped to the back slots?
My body is ready.
If you do change this, be aware that you cannot equip small items like knives to back slots. One small problem that I noticed is that it does mess with the slots on the enemy characters. You're no longer able to grab items from their shoulder or hip slots. Instead, you'll have to grab the item itself. For example, you can see the indicator for the slots appear when I hover my hand over the weapons on the enemy, but I can't grab it. So to remove it, I'll have to grab a part of the weapon instead. All in all, this mod is just fantastic. It didn't take me very long to get used to where all the slots are, and I found it to be a real game changer, especially for gunslingers, archers, or whatever ranged character class that you decide to roleplay as because of the additional slots for ammo and other equipment. I hope something like this makes it into the full release of Blade & Sorcery, but for now, I would definitely recommend trying this mod out. Hey, I bet you that I can get a headshot on that dude without even looking. If I do, you have to subscribe, okay? I'm just playing around. I can't actually do that. But now that we have two mods that take Blade & Sorcery combat to the next level, here's something for those that want to incorporate bow and arrow into their fighting style but have a hard time aiming. Seeking Arrows, created by Bread and uploaded by user BreadyMans, is a mod that can do two things. It gives you automatic headshots and also allows arrows to penetrate through walls. Both settings, labeled as Aimbot and Wallbang respectively, can conveniently be toggled in the mod configuration menu, along with a speed multiplier that ranges from 0 to 10.9. The speed and the wallbang settings are only applied to arrows that have triggered the aimbot, and to trigger it, you just need to fire an arrow in your target's general direction, and the mod will take care of the rest. However, the aimbot will select a target for you if you fire into a group of enemies. It'll target whichever enemy is closest and alive. The speed multiplier changes how quickly an arrow travels. Something cool that I learned is that if you change it to 0 and fire the arrow, it just falls down in slow motion. but the arrow is still locked on. Watch what happens when I set up a bunch of arrows like this and then increase the speed multiplier.
I'm in danger!
The wallbang setting works pretty well as long as your enemy has some distance away from the object that you're trying to shoot through. I found that the arrow can sometimes just bounce off of their head if they're standing too close to it. I do want to mention that this mod only applies to the base game arrows. Any arrows added by other mods won't trigger the aimbot, so the speed multiplier and the wallbang will not go into effect, unfortunately. And hitting with the aimbot isn't 100% guaranteed. Sometimes the arrows will just bounce off the enemies or just fly off. This mod is pretty neat and can be fun, however it isn't for me. I think this mod is more for people that want to easily pull off maneuvers like this, I personally enjoy the small satisfaction of having to manually aim and seeing my arrows hit, but I'm not gonna lie and say that I didn't have a blast filming these sick moves. That is it for this episode. This video shoutout goes to Sasper Kreblin, or user KL2LB8OQ6R. Last time I asked you guys what your favorite spell was, to which Sasper answered with Mystic Hands. I haven't had much time to play with that spell yet, but from what I've experienced so far, I really dig it. There were a lot of cool spells that were mentioned in the comments, some of which I've never even heard of. I'm gonna have to take some time to play with the spells that you guys suggested, but my current favorite is still Spectral Armory. I'm more of a melee combat kind of person, and that mod does a fantastic job of combining magic and melee. So the question that I have for you this time is, if you could make one improvement to Blade and Sorcery, what would it be? I'm not talking about stuff like adding scripting to Nomad, I'm talking more so about in-game things like weapon handling, for instance. Let me know in the comments and you'll get a chance to get a shout out in the next video. With that, I want to thank you for watching and also thank everyone that left a comment in the previous video. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel so you don't miss out on future uploads as they come out. See you next time.